Hey everyone, it's Mr. Fashionably Late here. Okay, just Mr. Late here. And I finally got around to playing Shadow Generations. And let me just say right off the bat, oh yeah, this right here, this is good. Not even 2 years after the latest mainline Sonic game, that being Sonic Frontiers. And we got the announcement of not only a Sonic Generations remaster, but a whole new game to go along with it. That being Shadow Generations. If you didn't know, this is the first game that we've gotten to play as Shadow in a very long time. Well, at least in a good game. And when it first got revealed to me and many others, to put it lightly, it was a huge surprise. This would be the first time we've gotten Shadow as the main character since Shadow the Hedgehog back in 05. This game is literally just the Bowser's Fury equivalent of the Sonic franchise. And some of you might be wondering, why did it take you so long to get around to playing this game? Well, the first reason being I wanted to clear out my backlog a bit. And the second and most important one being that I wanted to wait for the physical edition to come out, or else I probably would have bought it digitally to get it early like every other YouTuber. And before we dive into the game, I wanted to take you through this physical edition because it's one of the cooler ones I've seen in recent times. No, this video will contain spoilers, so if you do not want to be spoiled, you should leave the video now. I will be going over the entire game, so you should leave now. Alright, let's get started. So starting off, you have the normal cover, which is fine. It's not special, but when you reverse the cover, did I do that right? You get this beautiful art, which wasn't even gonna be a part of the physical version at first. It's actually the Japanese cover art, but people begged Sega to give us this cover, so they did. And it looks so beautiful. These are some of the best renders we've gotten for a Sonic game in forever. But the main attraction of this physical version is Gerald's journal. I won't spoil all of it because it's a pretty cool read for any Sonic fan that has a ton of lore in it, both old and new. And I love how it looks all damaged, like it's something I found aboard the Ark after it was destroyed. And it's not in perfect condition, which I really like. I think my favorite thing from this whole journal is how it really dives into Maria and Gerald's relationship. And finally, something I found out after buying the game is that you can actually find the pages of the journal in-game, in case you didn't buy the physical version, which I felt pretty stupid after finding that out because I thought it was exclusive to the physical version. Overall, this physical edition is really cool, and I'd recommend it for any Sonic fan due to the addition of Gerald's journal and getting two really good games alongside it. So the story starts off right where the prequel animation Dark Beginnings ends. Just to summarize that ending, Rouge and Omega help Shadow get aboard the Ark because Shadow has been informed of some sort of anomaly by Gun. And when he's looking around, he spots Doom's Eye from Shadow the Hedgehog. He then decides to chase him, which leads right into the first stage, the Space Colony Ark. And this is a great first stage. This is something really common with this game, but just starting off, you can see a ton of different routes when it comes to the stages in this game. Which, just thinking about it off the top of my head, not much 3D Sonic games recently have had this type of choice. Like the last one we got with this amount of choice was probably the original Sonic Generations, and that came out in 2011. But continuing on, this stage is for the most part your average Sonic stage until you get to this section and have to use Chaos Control to stop this giant missile from hitting you. And this guy Shadow punches the missile into pieces. He's him. But I just want to mention real quick, look at this transition from cutscene to gameplay. It's gotta be one of, if not the smoothest transition I've ever seen in a game. It looks so good. After progressing through the stage a little bit more, Shadow finds Doom's Eye again, where he does this cool warping effect to the whole stage, and it turns into Radical Highway from SA2. And as a SA2 fanboy, I was losing my mind seeing this for the first time. And it happens pretty frequently throughout the whole game, so get used to it. But for the most part, this section plays out fairly normal. After this stage, Shadow finds the fake Chaos Emerald that Tails ended up using back in SA2. This is a detail that's important for later, so just keep this in the back of your mind. After finishing the stage though, we find Omega in the hub world. He doesn't play any major role in the story, he's just chilling here. And for the most part, I don't think I'm gonna go over any of the second acts of the game. Most of them are 2D stages, but I think even for what they are, they're really good. And I was surprised when it came to the first 2D stage of this game, because in this stage we get the Doom Wings, and they're pretty well used in this stage, I'd say. You can use them to glide over gaps, which really lets you cut some time off of your runs, if used right. And I think they're a pretty cool addition to this game. But after this stage, Shadow ends up seeing both Maria and Gerald Robotnik in the distance, but he thinks that they're just hallucinations of some sort, and just moves on. And although we got to use the Doom Wings in the second stage, they weren't a permanent power-up. But we do get our first permanent one right after that last stage. that being the Doom Spears. They aren't anything too complex, but Shadow is able to throw up to 5 spears by holding down the triangle button, which can be used to flip switches or stop certain enemies from attacking Shadow. But after obtaining this power, the next stage is Rail Canyon from Sonic Heroes. And I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of this stage. It's not bad, far from it actually. But if you were to ask me what my least favorite stage from this game was, I'd definitely say Rail Canyon. It has a lot of rails, I know, surprising, huh? And at a certain part of this stage, I was just thinking to myself, alright, let's wrap this up. I'm getting tired of those damn rails. But overall, it's a fine enough stage. After Rail Canyon, Shadow needs to climb up this castle looking structure, and once we get up there, we get another Doom power. This one being Doom Blast, and I honestly think it's my favorite new ability you get throughout the entire game. When it comes to the bigger enemies in this game, this power up lets you beat the shit out of them, launch them in the air, and knock them away, and follow up on them to reach new paths. And it just looks really cool, so it's definitely my favorite one. And at this point, the first boss is almost accessible. First, we have to do these challenge gates that are returning from Sonic Generations. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in Sonic Gens, you just needed to do one challenge per stage in order to acquire the key needed to access the boss. But in this game, you need to do 2 challenges per stage to acquire it. And I really do like the challenge stages in this game compared to Sonic Gens. They are all fun and test your knowledge of the game's mechanics. While a few of the ones in Sonic Gens were a bit gimmicky and not really that fun to do, at least for me, there is a variety of these challenges, such as killing a certain amount of enemies before reaching the goal, beating the stage with 1 ring only, and my favorite ones throughout the whole entire game are definitely the ones that make you utilize your Doom powers to get to the end of the stage. At the beginning of the game, I was pretty horrible at using them, but these stages definitely helped me get a bit more used to them, and they were fun to do. After getting the keys from both the Ark and Rail Canyon, we can take on the first boss, that being the Bio Lizard. And it's a pretty good first boss. The way to beat it is to just hit this little support pack on his back. Bars. And it's pretty simple, which is fine because it's the first boss, but something cool that does happen during this fight is towards the end, Shadow uses Chaos Control to stop this energy ball being thrown at him and kick it back towards him, which was pretty cool. Next up, there is another cutscene, not a big one or anything, but it shows Black Doom for the first time in this game, and he just tells Shadow that he plans on rebuilding his army and that Shadow is not ready to fight him yet. And it's at this point that we not only get another Doom power, but this is the point of the game where the open zone really opens up. And for a side game, I was surprised at the size of it and how many things there are to do in it. There are certain challenges that you can do, like following around these stopwatches and grabbing them within a certain amount of time, collecting a certain amount of rings in a certain amount of time, or finding chests that contain extra content that you can unlock by finding these coins in the actual stages. And I think it's pretty fun to just run around in. I know a lot of people's biggest complaint when it came to Sonic Frontiers was that the rails and springs didn't really fit into the worlds at all. And I think doing something as simple as just changing the textures of them, like in this game, does wonders in making it seem more natural. And speaking of more natural, the biggest change to the open world that I hope carries over to Frontiers 2 is the fact that there is no poppin'. Thank you. This world looks so good with no poppin', and just thinking about the game having it makes me so sad. It would make this area look so much worse, so I'm glad that's an issue that they fixed for this game. Before we talk about the next stage, which might just be the best one in the game, I want to just go over the Doom powers and what I dislike about them, just so I don't have to keep reintroducing them as the game goes on. The first one isn't a Doom power, but since we're playing Shadow, we do got Chaos Control. And I really like how it's used here. I don't think it's in any other game where you could play as Shadow, at least to this extent, where you're able to stop time with it, would have guessed, and jump on things that would usually hurt you, like rockets, and I think that's it for this game. But you could also take these extra routes that really shave a lot of time off your runs, and stop the timer. Next we have the Doom Wings, Spears, and Blast, which I already went over, so I'll skip these. But I really like them all, I'll say that. The next one is important for the next stage, but it's a pretty basic one, that being Doom Surf. It's just a way to traverse the water without sinking to the bottom, like you typically do in Sonic games. You can also press L1 or R1 to do an attack side to side, but that's about it for this form. It's just kind of alright. And the final Doom power you get, take a shot every time I say Doom in this video, you'll be dead by the end of it. That being Doom Morph. And it's maybe just a skill issue, but I really don't like this one. You turn into what looks like a squid or octopus of some kind, and you could swim around this goop and swing off these balls. But a lot of the time I would dash and it goes way too fast with the player having very little control over it, which would just lead to me hitting walls constantly. And swinging off the balls isn't much better. I don't know how to describe it, but I guess I'd say the grab animation and actually letting go of it felt a bit delayed. Every single power in this game feels great to use, but I think this one is definitely the most inconsistent to use. It just feels like they didn't have as much time to polish this one compared to the others. But I don't know, let me know what you guys feel. I think overall the Doom powers are an amazing addition to this game. A lot of people's complaints when it comes to the boost games is how simple the gameplay is. You typically just need to use X and square and push forward the whole time. But incorporating the Doom powers into the game makes you have to use them along with your usual boost controls. And when they're all implemented in a way that makes you use them all at the same time, it feels so good to get good at using them. And I'd love if they kept implementing powers like these ones if they do continue to make boost games. The next stage is probably my favorite, to be honest, and that is Kingdom Valley from Sonic 06. Just off the bat, I think this level is the best looking in the game. I don't know how big it is when compared to the other stages in the game, but it feels like there are so many different paths you could take when it comes to the stage. And I especially love this open section where there's water above Shadow. It makes the stage look so beautiful. The next stage after this one though took me and many others by surprise, that being Sunset Heights. And you know what's crazy about this level? They actually made it good. Not only does it require some thought to be good at, but I really like how the Eggman robots, or Robobots, whatever the fuck they're called, in the background will try to attack Shadow and you have to move around their attacks. And this cutscene, man, I get annoyed having to sit through it each time I play the level, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's so clean. I really like this section right here because it makes you have to hit the springs while charging up your spears to hit these guys, or else you're dead. I just wanted to point this out as it's something I said earlier about incorporating the Doom powers into the actual gameplay. I know I've repeated this a lot, but I need someone to tell me, have we gotten a transition this smooth from cutscene to gameplay ever in a Sonic game? Because I hope we keep going in this direction for the series. I love it. This stage also has a Radical Highway section, and I found this bit to be so cool with how the buildings morph into a platform for Shadow to run on. Overall, this stage is great. If you were to ask me if I wanted Sunset Heights to come back in a Sonic game, I definitely would have said no. But this stage makes me so glad I am not in charge of making those choices. The next cutscene shows that Shadow actually ends up meeting with both Maria and Gerald. A little into this cutscene, it shows us what Shadow's main goal is right now, and that is to change both Maria's and Gerald's fates, which, come on guys, we know how this ends. Fast forward a bit and we are on the next boss, that being Metal Overlord from Sonic Heroes. And to be honest, it's alright. The entirety of the fight takes place on the Doom Surf power-up, so the amount of things you can do is pretty limited. What I'm Made Of from Sonic Heroes is the song that plays during the fight, so you get a few points. But for a fight like this, it's as simple as you'd think it'd be. You just hit the objects towards the enemy and eventually the fight is over. Shadow basically just kicks Metal really hard and he just explodes. The end. So overall, a pretty meh boss, I'd say. Next cutscene. This next cutscene is a pretty big one. It reveals that Shadow was created in order to help cure Maria's illness, and that Gerald made a deal with Black Doom in order to create Shadow. And his goal now is to take over Shadow's body, and Shadow basically says, nah, I'm gonna do my own thing. While I'm on the topic of cutscenes, I just want to mention that I think not only are the cutscenes majorly improved compared to something like Frontiers, the cutscenes are more dynamic even when there's nothing going on. And the voice acting is pretty good also. I think Kirk Thornton really stepped up this game when compared to something like Sonic Forces.
Say goodnight, blue boy. Maria? No. She's gone. I'm seeing things. Maria!
Whether that's because of having a better understanding of the character or a bigger check, I don't know, but I really like that there's more emotion to Shadow this time around, even if it's hidden behind layers of being closed off from everyone else around him. Another big but welcome surprise is our next stage, Chaos Island from Sonic Frontiers. This one utilizes Chaos Morph a good amount, which I've already said I'm not a huge fan of, but other than that, it's a great stage, and it looks really good, so I'm glad they did Chaos Island justice in this game. How does it make sense we're playing the stage that's technically from the future and not even from a game that Shadow's in? I don't know, but don't ask questions, I guess. After this stage though, we find Sonic, and let me just say, this whole sequence is beautifully animated. From the expressions of both characters to the way the fighting is animated, or the way they just move around, and the fact that they hit the pose and it just looks way better than in Generations. It's amazing. Give me more of this, please. This cutscene doesn't even serve much of a purpose rather than just to show us that Shadow actually gave Sonic the fake emerald in Sonic Generations. I honestly thought this would lead into a boss fight against Sonic, even if Shadow technically ends up losing, but I guess not. I'm not complaining, but it was just a surprise to me. Also, hearing Flying the Freedom in a Sonic game again was something I was not expecting to hear, but I'm all for it. Next, we need to traverse this cave area, and I really liked it. It has an eerie vibe to it, and once you get to the end, we find our third boss of the game, Mephiles. And I really do like this boss. Not only is it a fun one and uses the Doom Morph pretty well, but I think whoever plays Mephiles does a great job, and the writing is just as great. I really like how he just wants to exist and not be forgotten at all. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Shadow remembers who Mephiles actually is. But if he does, then he just doesn't give a fuck.
There is no future for you. Ever.
Doom Morph is also just used way better in this fight compared to Chaos Island. Just keeping the power restricted to a smaller area helped not overshoot my boost and accidentally launch myself off the map. So that's good. I know this whole video I've been saying this cutscene looks great, or that cutscene looks great, but I do think this one at the end takes the cake for being the best. I really like this entire sequence, from the
choreography
to the way Shadow says this shit.
There is no future for you. Ever.
Damn, he's him. It's some great stuff, and it's definitely the best boss so far. The next cutscene is basically Black Doom saying, hey, Shadow, come meet me up here. I'm ready to kick your ass. But the back half of this cutscene is what I really like. Shadow is driven by anger, whether that's because he couldn't save Maria or because he didn't fully kill Black Doom, or probably both to be honest, but he says he will kill every one of them, and Maria steps in saying that she doesn't want to see him be fueled by anger, and she wants him to be happy, and she is able to calm him down a little bit. He then runs away to go finish the job, and it's at this point of the game that I start to think to myself, damn, maybe I kinda do feel bad for laughing at all the Maria getting shot jokes. I never really noticed until this point, but she was never really a character besides she's sick and being caring. So Sega giving her even the slightest resemblance of a character kinda makes you start to feel bad for her. So here's to hoping Shadow can save the day, change their fates, and they all can go home happily ever after. I didn't touch on this last power that much because you don't really use it all that often, but the last Doom power Shadow unlocks is the Doom Wings. And it's essentially your supersonic form for this game. You're not invincible while you use them, but you need more than 50 rings to use them. They drain your rings over time, and they let you fly around. So I'd count it. And we do get another cutscene, but it's basically just Shadow reassuring Maria that he's letting go of that anger that he once had and will overcome Black Doom his own way.
Fight with your wish in my heart. Your wish for everyone to have a chance to be happy.
This shit means something to me, man.
We have to actually platform our way up to the final stage, but I was exploring a bit with the Doom Wings and just managed to skip a good chunk of that section, which was pretty cool. But once we're up here, we do have access to the final acts of the game, that being Radical Highway. And I know I said I was surprised at the inclusion of stages like Kingdom Valley and Sunset Heights, but I had seen those be revealed in trailers for the game, and at some point I decided to stop watching trailers. So unless this stage was revealed in some new trailers, I had no idea we were going to get full acts for Radical Highway, and I thought we'd only get the snippets of it we get to see throughout the game, and I was kind of sad about that. But when I clicked on the stage for the first time and saw Shadow slide down the Golden Gate Bridge rails, I lost my mind. As a Sonic Adventure 2 fanboy, I was beyond excited to see this stage in the game. When starting the stage, we get access to the Doom Wings, and to be honest, on my first playthrough, I was kind of overwhelmed with how open-ended this level actually is. You're able to fly over so much of the level, and for the final act of the game, I really like that you're able to do this. There is a normal route you could take without using the Doom Wings, but I didn't use it much. Obviously because I'm a pro gamer.
Stop the cap.
Overall, as a final stage, I think Radical Highway is great, and I love how it looks like Radical Highway, but has the whole distortion effect going on during the entirety of the stage, especially in Act 2. That makes it stand on its own, and it's amazing. The same can't be said for the next and final boss of the game, though. I think from a visual and spectacle standpoint, this fight is really cool, but I just hate how the majority of the fight use my two least favorite Doom powers. The first section of the fight against Devil Doom is on the Doom Surf, and it feels almost exactly the same as Metal Overlord, except there are more hazards being thrown your way. So it's a very meh first section. The second section of the fight utilizes my least favorite Doom power, that being Doom Morph. I don't think I said this earlier, but one of the things I hate most about this form is how heavy the jumping feels. I know it's probably like this to encourage the use of the grapple move more, but I just hate how heavy it is. And as you progress further in this section, it sends you further and further back from Black Doom, so you just have to deal with this power up for a decent amount of time. And the final section, while cool looking, is nothing special. You just fly towards Black Doom, avoiding any obstacles that come your way, and eventually he's dead. Hopefully permanently this time. The start of the next cutscene shows that Rouge is actually going to swap out the real emerald with the fake one that Sonic has right now. Can someone tell me if there's a real reason for them showing this? Besides establishing that Sonic has all of the emeralds, including the real yellow one, in Sonic Gens? Other than that, I don't really see a reason for this scene, to be honest. Side tangent aside, Shadow meets up with Maria and Gerald, but they are starting to fade away Spider-Man style.
I don't feel so good.
This is due to Black Doom being defeated, which is starting to send the both of them back to their own times. Shadow wants to stop it by using the Chaos Emerald, but Maria says no. And you know what? Just listen to this.
You don't know what's going to happen.
I know I'll see you again. And if fate draws us apart, I will always be in your heart.
Maria.
Damn, that's some strong stuff. I feel like we haven't gotten writing like this in a Sonic game since probably Unleashed 06. Frontiers definitely leaned into the more serious territory, but it didn't have messages or even lines of dialogue this deep from what I can recall. But after all this, Shadow just runs away, and as he's running, he passes Rouge when something hits her, that being a tear. And just like that, the game is done. After finishing the main story, you can go back into the game and clean up any collectibles you might have missed. But in terms of post-game content, there isn't much. But I do like what's here, don't get me wrong. The two biggest things made for post-game is hard mode for each of the bosses, which aren't too difficult from what I've seen, but from what I've heard, getting an S rank is pretty hard, as you cannot get hit once, or else your S rank run is over. This is for all those people out there saying that the game is too easy, so have fun. And the second piece of post-game content, and the one I spent the most time with, is 2 new challenge gates for each of the zones. I didn't do all of them, but the ones I did do were pretty challenging and really fun. I really like this one where you only have 1 ring to get through the entire stage. There were some like this earlier in the game, but they weren't difficult at all. And I definitely didn't struggle on this hard one at all. I would recommend you try these for sure. They're a fun time. Overall, Shadow Generations is an amazing time, and if you haven't played Sonic Generations, I think the game is definitely worth it. But if you have played Sonic Gens before, maybe wait for a sale. I finished the game in 5 hours, so some people might not be able to justify the price tag, but as someone who loves Sonic, maybe a bit too much, I'd recommend it any day of the week. I'm also really glad the game is pretty replayable. I found myself just jumping into some of the stages again in my free time, much like other Sonic games, so I am happy that it's actually replayable. There are plenty of pros when it comes to this game, whether it's the story, which is written really well, or level design, which is some of the most open-ended we've ever seen in a boost game, or even the implementation of Doom powers into the core gameplay. There are tons of great things about this game, but are there any cons? There aren't many major cons that I can think of, but I do think at certain instances, when using Chaos Control, certain scenes would not happen, and I'd end up dying due to it, which was kind of annoying, like this clip right here.
Chaos Control! No!
Also, whenever you do a homing attack, it does the Sonic Frontiers thing where you'll freeze for a tiny bit when you actually do it. But I got used to it, so it's not a huge deal, I guess. But I think my biggest negative would be that some of the bosses are kind of just fine. Not horrible or anything, just fine. They definitely have their moments, but on a gameplay level, they aren't too deep. But yeah, I can't think of a way to end this video, so play Yakuza. I'll see you in the next one. Peace!
He's gonna take you back to the past to play the shitty games and suck at keep a buffalo.
Conclusion. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is my first time doing a review like this, so I understand that the writing might not be amazing, but bear with me while I work on improving in the future. But do you guys like reviews in this style? I was stuck between doing the style I did for the video, where I just go through the game from start to finish, giving my thoughts along the way, or doing it the classic way of here's the story, here's the gameplay, etc, etc, etc. So let me know your guys' thoughts. I am genuinely curious, but if you made it this far, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.